Hello everyone, I'm Brazen Eagle, and thank you for joining me here. So, today, we have an article from a few days ago from Bloomberg. The pound, or hashtag, no marriage movement is adding to Korea's economic woes. Oh no, what could this be about? No marriage? Economic woes? Oh no! So, Baek Ha-na works in accounting during the week. On the weekends, she's a YouTube star in South Korea promoting the Live Alone life. Oh boy. Baek, whose YouTube channel in English is called Solodarity, objects to being called a mihun, someone who is not yet married. She's part of a growing and determined group of Korean women rejecting marriage and motherhood. Oh no. Such decisions are intensifying demographic and economic challenges for the government, as the country faces one of the world's lowest birth rates and a shortfall in pension funding that is getting harder to close, with fewer workers joining the labor force. So it's always coming back to money. That's why the government is concerned. And apparently this is Baek Ha-na in the photograph. I legit thought this was a guy when I first saw this picture, but it is supposedly female. So, society made me feel like a failure for being in my 30s and not yet a wife or a mother, Baek said. Instead of belonging to someone, I now have a more ambitious future for myself. That honestly sounds like an excuse for someone who has failed to become a wife or mother. Anyways, Baek and her YouTube co-host maintain that the government's current approach infuriates many women. They argue that the latest efforts to boost birth rates are abusive and frustrating because they fail to address the lack of legal avenues to ensure career development for mothers or alleviating financial burdens in raising children. So they just want more money. That's what the women want. They just want more money. Alright, fewer babies. When it comes to the birth rate, South Korea has ranked at the bottom of OECD countries in the Asia-Pacific region since 2016, with that rate going even lower this year. According to data compiled by the World Bank, South Korea and Puerto Rico, surprisingly, tied for the lowest overall rates as of 2017. 7 kids per 1,000 people, followed by Japan and Hong Kong. What is happening to these Asian countries? I wonder what it could be. Data from South Korea's National Statistics Agency in April show the number of births dropped even further as of February, a 7% decline from a year earlier. In 2019, the number of those dying is expected to outpace the number of those being born, the report said. A separate report from the agency shows fewer women believe marriage is a must. In 2010, 64.7% of women in South Korea answered that marriage is required for women, while 48.1% gave the same response in 2018. Government matchmaking. South Korea's government is reacting by offering incentives to encourage marriage and especially parenthood. In Sejong, a city designed to be South Korea's new administrative capital, about 30 single men and women attended their latest event in June. The office's goal was to encourage working single men and women to take part in recreational activities and table talks. In Gangnam, the Seocho district office held a similar event last year with 50 participants, 14 of whom got matched, the organizer said, adding they plan to hold another session this year. In a more rural part of the country, in South Chongcheong province, the government has asked single women to submit an application that includes their height, weight, employment history, as well as a recent photo, and indicate whether they were married before. Alright. South Korea's President Moon Jae-in launched a committee in December 2017 to tackle the country's low birth rate called the Presidential Committee on Aging Society and Population Policy. We're now at the last golden time to fix a serious population problem, Moon said in a speech launching the committee. We must now focus on how marrying, giving birth, doesn't limit the lives of women. It actually does, and that's okay. Economic fallout. The nation's latest report on population cited a looming threat for South Korea's labor force. For a decade following 2017, the number of people within the productive age range is expected to fall by 2.5 million, while the older population will rise by 4.5 million. Ooh. An estimated 37.6 million people were measured to be in the potential workforce in 2017. By 2067, 50 years later, the number is anticipated to drop by more than half to 17.5, according to the report. Wow. The demographic changes are already having an impact on some businesses. More than 20% of all wedding halls in Seoul have closed, including 2 of the largest venues in wealthier neighborhoods of Gangnam, Suavis Wedding Hall and JS Gangnam Wedding Culture Center, according to a city report. The Seoul Education Office announced earlier this year that it expects to close 3 elementary and middle schools by next February, while another middle school is closing and combining its campus with an elementary school that is also facing a student shortage. So it doesn't sound like it's good to be a teacher over there. In Busan, the number of elementary students registered for schools dropped by 26% over the past 9 years, from almost 200,000 students in 2010 to 147,000 students as of March 2019. That's a big loss of actually 50,000 students. The number of middle school students dropped by 43%, while high school students dropped by 40%. Writing solo. So, Beck, the YouTuber, says government policies to force a woman into marriage and childbearing represent a deeply ingrained perception of a woman in our society as an object, not an individual. She even refuses to be called a mihan, or not yet married, a common Korean term for a single woman. Beck prefers bihan or baihan, which means to not marry, to not have children. Beck is a member of the EMIF, or Elite Without Marriage I'm Going Forward. Elite? How does that make you elite? A network created for women to host discussions, attend film screenings, and hold networking events. At a recent evening meeting in Western Seoul, 9 members moved desks to form a circle to discuss being a bihan or baihan and the policies created to tackle South Korea's low birth rate. I'm coming back to this picture in a little bit. The government's biggest problem is that they aren't listening to the women, the actual subjects that have to bear children and have to raise the children, said Kang Han-buyul, the group's co-founder. They try to sell this idea that a family is beautiful, having children is beautiful, when there's many unspoken things that actually happen to the woman physically, mentally, which is why these policies will never win us over. It's almost as if you just take their rights away, they're going to have to listen to you anyways. Others also reject long-held roles for women in South Korea, including motherhood. This traditional role enforced on us, from a boys-only soccer field at school to a boys' club and a company office, already makes us second-class citizens, and I don't want to be used as a tool simply for baby making, says Jung Si-young, a co-host on Beck's YouTube channel. Well, I mean, with attitudes like this, no wonder we're going to have the artificial womb within 10 years. Trending on Twitter. The reaction to what the women call South Korea government's tone-deaf policies have prompted a hashtag on Twitter as well, with women sharing their stories about living a life not focused on marriage and having babies. People used to say, I can't do anything without a father in the house, and an anonymous account dedicated to sharing her bihan life posted on Twitter. I bought a silicone gun on my own, and can mend my own windows to block the rain from leaking in. Why did I ever doubt myself before? Alright, and I guess that's the tweet, and that's pretty much it from Bloomberg. Alright. So, at the end of the day, South Korea is literally dying as a nation. These women are choosing not to have families and kids. But this is all a combined effort to lower the fertility rate of South Korea. So, I mean, the article opens up with talking about some of the issues that countries, not just South Korea, but countries that have a low fertility rate or low birth rate. So some of the effects, of course, are, less pension funding, and of course a smaller pool of labor for the workforce. Makes sense. But, there are other effects when you have a small or tiny fertility rate, including becoming weaker as a country where you can't defend yourself against other countries. Maybe like if they ended up in a war against North Korea or the People's Republic of China. And also another effect is the greater potential loss of traditional culture, because people just don't... If people choose to break away from your culture like what these women are doing now, I mean, your traditional culture isn't going to be exactly the same. Sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes when you have immigration and you don't assimilate immigrants who might take the jobs that Korean people in this case could have taken, they might bring their own culture, they might not assimilate, and they might weaken the traditional culture within the country. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I'm not here to give my opinion about that in this particular case, but you can think for yourself. Now, this woman in this article named Beck Ha-na is legit just an example of a Korean woman who chooses not to have a family. And like I said before, when I first saw this picture, this looks like a dude. Like, really. Like, you can't tell that's a female almost. Now, Beck and the others like her, they bitch that it was society that made her feel like a failure for being in her 30s without a family or kids. Instead, she says she wants to have an ambitious future. This is just translating easily into saying that Beck and others like her want to be unhappy and make money for the rest of her life with nothing to show for it at the end. The idea that women are satisfied with just a career and no family at all, no kids, no husband, this is an absolute myth. Most females say they don't even want kids until they're actually in a long-term relationship, and then they begin to plan their future family. Then they find fulfillment in being a family planner. You know, it can happen to South Korean women, it can happen to American women, it can happen to European women, African women, South American women. It's women. That's a common denominator. Now, apparently, in this case, Beck, I don't know how to pronounce her name. I'm going to go with that. She has a YouTube channel and states that the government infuriates women. I mean, okay, Beck Ha-na and females like her say that the government efforts to boost the population fail to give women enough money for both a woman's career and raising children. You know, I thought Beck said she didn't want kids. I thought she said she wanted a career. Is she lying? Why is she complaining about the government trying to give some money out to family planners and women so they can have a career and kids, when Beck complains about, you know, not having enough money? You know, I mean, the government's only trying to do what it's trying to do to boost the birth rates because the women choose not to do it. I almost sound like Alex Jones here. Anyways, you know, does Beck actually want kids? It makes it sound like she actually does, and she's complaining that the government is trying to help, but it's not doing enough. Anyways, apparently South Korea has one of the lowest birth rates in the world, and actually surprised with Puerto Rico. I didn't know that. In 2017, South Korea, of course, only had 7 kids per 1,000 people. God dang! And I thought Japan's birth rate was bad. There are literally more dying Koreans right now than are being born. It seems like the government recognizes this crisis, but misidentifies how to approach the issue. What is the problem? Where is the bottleneck in this social experiment? You gotta ask yourself, who can have the babies? Can men have babies or women? Which one's the bottleneck? Well, obviously men can't have babies, so women are the bottleneck. So, for example, with the government trying to approach this issue, it has tried to offer incentives to encourage marriage. It makes sense, right? As well as parenthood. If you want to encourage something, you provide more money to it, and hopefully you'll get a boost in your expected result. You know, it just makes sense if you want a higher birth rate, and that's a result. The government, the South Korean government, set up meet and greets and activities for single men and women across the country. That makes sense, you know? Host events that people can get together and, you know, mingle around, I suppose. But, you know, as a side note, the government, the South Korean government, asked the single women to include their height, weight, employment history, a recent photo, and relationship history in their applications. That's honestly pretty humorous. Honestly, it's almost as if the government right now is trying to play the role of the dating app Tinder in South Korea. Their government seems to know what guys might find attractive in a female, such as being thin and youthful. That's what most guys like. Most guys, they aren't chubby chasers. There are probably a handful that are, but most guys, they don't want huge women. They don't want someone who's been generally married before or had a lot of partners, you know. It's just kind of funny seeing the government play the role of Tinder. Anyways, this article also says that there will probably be 17.8 million South Koreans in the workforce in 50 years, compared to the 37.6 million people in the workforce in 2017. That's insane. That's nuts. The chase for the eternal dollar is so strong that the country doesn't even care about it's going to probably half or divide the population in half in 50 years. They just want more money. It's ridiculous. You know, these people, I mean, not just South Koreans, but all of Western civilization, people just aren't thinking about the social repercussions of their actions. You can chase money, money, money all day long, but then your country's going to die in the end. Just because you're not going to run out of people technically, like if you have like 10 people left, doesn't mean someone isn't going to take you over. It's so bad here in South Korea, though, that they're even closing the schools. They're merging schools together, which, if you live where I live, which isn't completely strange, seeing as you might not have the numbers, but in South Korea, they're just closing them. where I live, sometimes they're combining them, not closing them, but they got to combine them because of financial constraints, not because there's a lack of kids. Where I live, I mean, the schools are kind of, I wouldn't say exploding, but they're definitely increasing in size. Now, let's get back to talking about our crying heroine, Beck Ha-na. She says the government views women as objects and not as individuals, as well as forcing women into marriages. That doesn't sound quite right. First of all, the government isn't instituting forced marriages. This isn't India, it's just South Korea. They are not forcing women to get married. Secondly, doesn't the government view men as objects too? The government only cares about men as a number in terms of who is funding the pensions, how many men are in the military for defense, and the number of men in the workforce. Men aren't seen as individuals, they're just seen as another number. The government doesn't view men as individuals, like I said. Thirdly, women are just objects in society nowadays. I mean, think about it. What value or worth does a woman's individuality bring to everyone else? Sure, you might have a handful of women who contribute to society through thought, science, or technology, but you know what? Men pretty much do everything to keep things running. If you took out one woman engineer and replaced her with a male engineer, odds are nothing's going to change. If anything, the efficiency and productivity of that male engineer who replaced the woman might even go up. You know? What value does a woman bring to a man, or even in the country nowadays? Besides being able to make children with a man, a guy gets no real benefits to getting married and being in a long-term relationship with a female. Just doesn't make sense. Sure, you can have a woman out of like every 10,000 people be successful, be different, be unique. Like the author of Frankenstein. She was one writer. I forget her name. But the author of Frankenstein was a woman, and just it was her out of like millions of other people that actually did something successful. Out of the other millions of women. Wow, congrats. Now, Beck here, she doesn't like being called a Mihan or not yet married. Apparently, she prefers Bihan or not going to have children. If you're not going to have kids, then why does the government or other Korean men keep you around then? She's providing a tiny, tiny amount of money to the government through taxes, of course, while continuing the decline of the country. Women having children are way more valuable to a country than women making money because men can't have babies. Not yet. Hopefully the artificial womb will be here soon enough, and hopefully men can help our population get back up to replacement levels. Anyways, I said I would come back to this video. Just look at this. This is supposedly like 9 women. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 women. And honestly, if you look at these women from the back, like this person over here, this looks like a dude. Like, I don't know what's going on in South Korea. If you look at this person from behind, I would say that would be a guy. Maybe, this is a big woman. She's big. I would think that would be a guy. Look at her haircut over here. Maybe she's okay? This looks like a dude, kind of. That definitely doesn't look like a male, and that could pass off as a male. I mean, no wonder these women are single. They look like guys. It doesn't make any sense. If you want to attract males, don't be in your 30s. And don't look like a dude. Anyways, in, these women's cases, these Bihans, are forming groups to talk about how the government wants them to have babies. Makes sense. These women complain that they don't want children. These women, like I just talked about, because of what happens to women when they have children, Females do change physically and mentally. It's absolutely true. But, you know what? They're complaining right now. But women complain about anything and everything, no matter what you do or what you allow women to do. Women, regardless of where they're from or what they're going to do, they're going to complain, no matter what. In this case, the government in South Korea is trying to use facts and logic to convince women to have kids. And we all know that most people don't change their way of life using facts and logic. It almost always fails when trying to be logical with people trying to see the benefit of changing their way of life. It's almost impossible. Most people will give you some sort of emotional response to deflect their imperfections and beliefs until their life is at stake. But at the end of the day, it is the South Korean women that are choosing to not get married and have a family, not the men. If women were actually worth something more than their uteruses, then maybe men would be interested in them. It doesn't help that these women in the picture above were 30 years old. Guess what? Guys generally don't want women in their 30s. They'll tolerate them, but guys, they want someone who's relatively young, legal, but relatively young and fertile. At the end of the day, too, men are the prize in the relationship, not the women. Society's got it reversed. Society says, or at least Western society, it says that women are the prize, and men, you must bow down to a woman so that she might give you a little bit of attention. That's absolute crap. Men are the prize in the relationship. But you know what? It is such a tragedy that women are the current bottlenecks of reproduction. Hopefully, the artificial womb will arrive soon enough so that men can restore their populations without women. Women have literally become useless nowadays. Of course, unless men decide to be men and take their women's rights away so they can get their replacement level up to an acceptable degree. But unless that actually happens, the West is just going to continue dying and dying until we break down, have civil war, balkanize, and not have a good time altogether. So, regardless, thank you very much for watching. I'm Brazen Eagle, and I hope you have a great day.